I actually saw Pet Sematary the film before I ever read the book, which was a mistake. As a close adaptation with the screenplay by Stephen King, it makes the book hard to read afterward. Going from read to watch order was a much better idea this time around. The book really takes its time introducing us to the characters and letting us know about their lives before any of the tragedy happens. We get to know our main character, Louis Creed, and how he doesn't have much faith to speak of. We meet his wife, Rachel, whose tragic experience with her dead sister has scarred her so terribly that she simply cannot deal with death at all. We meet Ellie, his precocious daughter, who, like many children in King's stories, has a second sight that she experiences through her dreams. And we meet sweet, adorable Gage, who is the perfect description of a 2-year-old, just learning to talk and really understand the world around him. Both children feel incredibly real thanks to the fact that they were close in age to King's own children at the time that he wrote this. In fact, the story is largely inspired by true events. King's daughter did have a cat who was run over in the busy road in front of the home they were living in. And his son came incredibly close one day to suffering the same fate. King just barely caught him and stopped him in time. Add to that the real pet cemetery behind their home, with the name misspelled just as it is here, and the story practically writes itself. In the foreword to the paperback I have, King calls this the most frightening story he's ever written. While I wouldn't really agree with that, I can certainly see why he thought so at the time. The movie cuts out a lot of the slow build that the novel has, but it still touches on all the important points. If anyone suffers from this abbreviation, it's Judd, but Fred Gwynne does such a fantastic job in the role that I can't really complain. Though it's a shame that his wife Norma is cut out of the film completely. The rest of the changes are pretty minor. Pascow has a stronger presence in the film, which is enough to earn him his presence on the poster. In the book, it's Ellie's dreams and then a gut feeling that helps push Rachel in the right direction, but it makes perfect sense to use Pascow as a more physical manifestation of good for the movie. When I read this book as a child, I remember thinking that Louis was incredibly stupid. He buries his cat in the space beyond the pet cemetery, and it comes back wrong. He's repulsed by it. So why on earth would he bury his child there? And then his child comes back and kills his best friend and his wife. So why in hell are you going to bury your wife there? Stupid, stupid, stupid. But in the span of time since then, I've lost a lot of loved ones. I understand the pain of loss and what it's like to deal with the fact that the people you love are gone now. So while I still think Louis is foolish, I understand and sympathize with him. I wouldn't use the burial ground, but I can understand how a man who doesn't believe there's anything on the other side might. Dale Midkiff gives his best performances in the film after Gage's death. He shows Louis's ineffectualness expertly. But really, the best performance in this film is given by Denise Crosby. Rachel's role is a complex one, with all the tragedy she's experienced in her life. The way she talks about Zelda's death makes you really feel for her, and then later she completely breaks your heart when she opens her arms to her dead son. The only truly bad performance here is Blaise Berdal as Ellie, but it's about on par for most child acting of the time period. What is not on par is Miko Hughes' performance. He was born in '86, and this was released in '89. So depending on when they filmed it, he was either 2 or 3 at the time. I'm not saying he deserves an Oscar, but I do think what he was able to pull off is pretty amazing. Director Murray Lambert clearly knew how to work with him to enhance his performances. A lot of his lines are performed off-screen, but they still convey the appropriate emotion for what he's saying. And his on-screen time also shows the right emotion at the right time. I'm not sure there was any way they could pull off these scenes without there being some degree of cheese involved, and yes, that doll looks completely ridiculous, but for what it is, I think it's great. Not really scary, but definitely entertaining.
First I played with Dad, then Mommy came, and I played with Mommy. We played, Daddy. We had an awful good time. Now I want to play with you.
Zelda, on the other hand, is pretty frightening. I was incredibly scared of her when I was a kid, and even now she just looks plain unsettling. She's so shrunken and stretched that you don't want to look at her, which is absolutely perfect given how Rachel herself feels. In the book, not all of the animals who come back from the cemetery are mean. Most are just sluggish. That's not true for the film, but I think it's necessary. You can't really get an animal to act slightly off without you actually knowing the animal's personality ahead of time. Look at my cats. Can you tell which one is sweet, innocent, and wonderful? And which is the demon hellspawn who defies me at every turn? But you can get animals to growl on command, so that's what they did here. I'm also highly impressed by the fact that they were able to get these cats to play dead so expertly. Given how fake the original dead cat looked, I'm pretty sure this is a living cat anyway. My only real problem with the movie is the ending, and it's twofold. In the book, Lewis's coworker Steve comes to check on Lewis and witnesses him dragging Rachel to the burial ground. While it's admittedly random and doesn't make much sense, Steve's appearance there does have a point. We're constantly told throughout the book that the burial ground has an influence on people, and that it continues the chain by getting those who have buried there previously to hook others into it. Steve is very nearly brought there by Lewis, but turns around at the last second. It's that tiny little ray of hope amidst all the darkness, and I really like that. It gives you the idea that maybe, just maybe, the cycle might end here. The other problem I have is the epilogue, which is far more important. It starts off the same. In the book, it's cut to black, the end. Decide for yourself what happens next, even if there really isn't much hope for Lewis at all. The movie, on the other hand, keeps going on. It's all a little too much in my opinion. I could say that maybe King was trying to prevent a sequel from happening, but yeah, that didn't work. As the end credits roll, we are treated to a Ramones song called Pet Sematary, as in they literally wrote this song for the film. It's a nice nod to the book, where Lewis frequently repeats, "Hey, ho, let's go," to himself as he goes about his dark deeds. I absolutely recommend the book. While it's not his best work, it's definitely in the top 10 and will give you lots to think about. The movie gives me a slight pause because of that ending, but overall it's still really good and I recommend checking that one out too.